Next up, we've got Wang from Novartis, who's going to present metashiny, building shiny apps with a shiny app. Take it away, Bo.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me and see me? And see my slides? Perfect. All right, thank you, Michael. So thank you for coming to my lightning talk, everyone. My name is Bo. I am a scientist, a data scientist with Novartis. And today I'm going to talk about a package I'm working on, which I named metashiny, build shiny apps with a shiny app. This is a shameful knockoff of the shiny meta package, but the two packages do very different things. So in the spirit of a lightning talk, let's just get right in. First of all, what is the deal? Let's say I want to build a shiny application to explore lab parameters or biomarker data over time in whatever study. And if you're not familiar with the CDX ADAM dataset, these lab datasets are normally in a long format. So for each patient, you would have some demographics and some treatment information. The different visits are recorded, again, stacked on top of each other, as well as the different parameters. And all lab values are recorded in one single column called, most of the times called AVAL, analysis value. So as a good data scientist or statistician, what should I do? The most intuitive way to visualize this longitudinal lab data set is probably a spaghetti plot on a patient level or a box plot to see some summaries at each visit. And I want to be able to color code the plot by treatment and come up with some kind of paneling using the demographics or other patient characteristics. And I'd like to see different lab parameters next to each other, side by side. So, and the last bit of my goal is to do this under 1 minute. Let's do it. I'm going to navigate to this live demo of the metashiny application. Well, first of all, I want to name my app. I'll call it Lab Exploratory, and I am the author. Oops. Who can't type? I am the author. And next up, I want to choose a data set to build my app on top of. Here, I will just use there are different ways you can read data from a database. You can search by program and study. Here, I'll just use the sample data set. And the next stop, we want to add a module that create that line plot or box plot shiny app on top of our data. So for longitudinal lab data set, what do I want to have on the x-axis? Probably something that has to do with the visit number, or the visit date. Here I'll use the analysis visit. And as I mentioned earlier, all the numeric value, lab values are recorded in the single column called AVAL. So I'll set that as my Y variable. And finally, I need the patient subject ID to connect the dots of measurements from each patient into a spaghetti plot. And let's see what happens if I click this Add Module to App. So voila, you now have a basic Shiny application in the Preview tab, which is actually a functioning Shiny app that you can interact with to see whether it works. And as I was saying, these configurations you're passing into this lab exploratory app you're building does not only pass on the information to the ggplot, to the different aesthetics and layers, it also creates a control widget in the child Shiny app you're building. So if you want to further customize this app, for example, right now, the plot is showing all lab parameters in your data set, and that does not make sense at all because the lab parameters all have different meanings and are on different units. So if you want to be able to basically slice off the data set and only show certain parameters, you can add a control widget to filter the lab parameters by their name, basically. And then it still doesn't make sense if you want to have multiple parameters in the same plot. So what you can do is you can add yet another control to facet the output of your shiny plot using the parameters. So they would be side by side when you choose multiple parameters to plot from. And finally, I'll just quickly, for example, fulfill my wish of color coding with treatment and add some baseline characteristics or demographics to facet my plot. And here, without writing single line of R code or even opening RStudio, you have a functioning app. And the last bit I want to go over is this last field where it says these variables will be fixed. So what happens very often is when we offered an app that has ultimate flexibility to end users, especially those with limited experience with this kind of dashboard, they kind of get overwhelmed by the amount of information they need to put in to use the app, even though a lot of times they don't really need to change anything. So a good way of kind of lessening that burden is, for example, in almost as long as you're using Atom dataset, the subject ID is always subject ID. So you can hide it from your end user and just set it to default. What else I want to also set the facet column variable to param and the visit number on the x-axis to analysis visit. And let's see what happens if I update the preview. Now, the few configurations that we want to hide from the end user are now fixed in this plot and won't, again, overwhelm the end user of this Shiny application. So I have fulfilled all my wishes to build a quick Shiny app to explore my lab data. And I'll go to this Done tab. And I have a few options here. Either I can bookmark the state of the app now and pull it up later and discuss it further with my stakeholder or with my colleague. Otherwise, I can download a zip file that includes all the script that I need to reproduce the app shown in the preview window. Or the last option is I can just simply click this button and not only create the app, but also deploy the app under my home directory on the Shiny server. Let's give it a second to load. And this app should look exactly the same as what I have in the preview. Voila. Ta-da. Okay, so let's go back to my slides. Okay, let's jump back to answering those basic questions, like why? Why do you want to do this? Well, there are a handful of, as a Shiny developer, I've noticed that there are a handful of plots or analysis repeatedly requested in almost every Shiny project for clinical studies. They're basically the same, but they have small variations based on the specific study design. And my goal of developing this package is to get about 80% to 90% of the work done without fussing with our Shiny code. And then we can start from there to reach the 100% goal. I'll skip the how. I have a expo set up. So if you have any questions about how, you can go to the expo or like start a session and we can discuss. And finally, a bit about the benefits and who this is for. Well, first of all, it's for poor Shiny developers like me, who is determined to modularize everything at the start of every project, but eventually couldn't because of the slightly different requests, which is basically the last 10 to 20% of details. And also, this app can serve the non-R users, for example, SAS programmers, statisticians, and even end users like clinicians and safety experts, so they can quickly spin up an app to further discuss with Shiny developers about their user requirements. I'll also skip the next steps, and I'd like to thank everyone at my team, Scientific Computing and Consulting at Novartis, as well as Andrew Wright, from whom basically I stole the idea that goes behind the scene for this project. Not all of it, part of it.
All right.
Okay.
The sound
Thank
of
you, Michael.
380 attendees clapping. So very awesome. And all
Thank
those
you.
programmers who now can develop Shiny apps, or SaaS programmers who can now develop Shiny apps. Definitely gonna have to check out. I'll forward your questions into the expo too. But thank you so much. That was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you.